Welcome to the OCIA Book Club. My name is Rosie Hernandez, Director of Formation and Evangelization. I'm reading and breaking down each part of the newly translated Order of Christian Initiation of Adults, reviewing the content and the important elements of each section. This is episode 9B, where I will be exploring the entire rite of election, and that is in the books number 129 through 137 is the actual rite. Now you might be thinking, well, if I go to the bishop for this rite and I don't need to plan it, why would I need to know about it? In the last episode, 9A, we talked about its importance and what each element means. And in this episode, we'll talk about the exact rite and what happens. And the reason it's important to know both is so that you can get a better handle of the rite and be able to better prepare your catechumens, your sponsors and godparents, as well as your catechists for this great occasion. So without further ado, let's jump into the rite of election. Number 129 reminds us that this takes place after the homily, and the homily is addressed to not only the catechumens, but also to anyone who is gathered, all of the assembly that is gathered. So this is happening at a Sunday Mass, to all the regular Sunday Mass attendees, to your community. If it's happening at a diocesan level, then to all the sponsors and godparents and team members, everybody who's present. And the purpose is so that the homily helps us to begin to prepare for the celebration of the Paschal Mystery that we celebrate throughout Lent and then finally at Easter Vigil. And that, of course, is meant for everyone. Number 130 tells us that after the homily, someone comes forward to present the catechumens to the bishop. And this can be a priest of the parish, it can be a deacon, it can be a layperson. It just has to be someone that actually represents those that are being presented. So if you're doing this at a parish level, it would be your DRE or your whoever is coordinating initiation for the parish. Doing it at the diocesan level would be somebody from the diocesan offices who works regularly with this area. So they are presented to the bishop, and then the bishop invites them, come forward. Now, at this point, you can call them individually by name or you can call them by group. Obviously, at a diocesan level, we call them by parish. And then they don't come forward, but they stand just because of space constraints. At a parish level, you might call them by name and have them come up to the altar. But if you're not calling them by name at the rite of election, then parishes should be calling them by name at the rite of sending, because that symbolism of being called forward by name is very important. So at some point or another, that should be happening. So if it's not happening at the diocesan celebration, then it's happening at the parish celebration or at the rite of sending. Number 131 talks again about the bishop, who then addresses the whole assembly. If he was part of the discernment of this group, so for example, if you are doing that at your parish and your pastor was a part of the discernment, bringing them to this point, then you can use either A or B. But if he was not, so for example, our bishop is not part of the actual discernment of every single parish. So when we do the rite of election, he should use prayer B, and that's kind of a distinction. And then he questions the godparents to see if they will actually support this catechumen as they continue on their journey. And he also has the option then to question the assembly, if the present assembly will support them as well. Number 132, then he questions the catechumens and asks them if it is their will to receive these sacraments, to be entered into this community of faith. And after they say yes, hopefully, he invites them to enroll their names for enrollment. And this is where the Book of the Elect is presented. Now, with the Book of the Elect, there's many options for this. The recommendation, if you're attending the diocesan celebration, is that all of the catechumens sign it at the rite of sending or right before the rite of sending, so that they are sent with a signed book and then they arrive. So the way to do it is to have them sign it in some type of ritual form. So even if they're doing it in the session before the rite of sending, you still play soft music, have the godparents walk up with them with a hand on the shoulder. You still make it a ritual. It's not just, let's pass the book around before Mass. Everybody sign it, hurry up before we go in for the rite. So really make sure that that is well planned out. Then they present the book of the elect, and a song, Psalm 16 or similar, can be sung while this is happening. So it's kind of a ritualistic moment to bring these books forward. Number 133 then is the proclamation of the bishop, who says now they have definitely chosen 4 sacraments at Easter Vigil, and their names are enrolled for that. And this is a big moment, because at this moment, basically they change from being catechumens to being elect, because now they are formally accepted into this moment of final preparation. He says a few words to support them, and then he says a few words to the godparents, reminding them of their commitment. And then we move on to the intercessions. Now, this is another tricky area. So when we do this with the bishop, because it's not a Sunday Mass and we don't have dismissal and then the rest of the Mass or anything like that, it's just the liturgy of the Word, we use options A or B in our in the intercessions at this point. Now, if you were doing this as part of a Mass, then you have the option of either adding in a petition for the church as a whole and for the world, which you would normally do on a Sunday regular petitions. You use those with these. You enter them in, and then that way when it becomes the universal prayer for the Mass instead of just for this rite. Or you could do just a few for the rite itself, and then when you continue Mass, continue with the prayers. So if you've decided that, or like, let me go back. For example, what we do at the Rite of Election with the bishop, it's not a full Mass. Therefore, we just have the intercessions as needed. Okay, so that change is only if you're going to have Mass as well. Number 135 then shows us that the bishop prays over the now elect of God, using either prayer A or B as kind of the closing of the intercessions, as well as a prayer over them. And then we have the dismissal, of which we have different options. So 136 explains that if there is Eucharist and you're just dismissing the catechumens, but everyone else is staying for Mass, for the rest of the Mass, liturgy of the Eucharist, then you can use either A or B. There's 4 A, B, C, D, so you can use A or B. If they, the now elect of God, for whatever reason, this happens at a Mass and they're staying in Mass, there is no dismissal, then you use C, prayer C. But then this is what we do when we gather with our bishop. The entire assembly is going to be dismissed. Then we use option D. Okay, so A and B are if you're going to have Eucharist following the liturgy of the Word. C is if they're going to stay for Mass. And then D is if the entire assembly is being dismissed because it's over. Okay, and there's no Mass to follow. 137 continues, if there is liturgy of the Eucharist to follow, then you can do the universal prayer, and then if required, the creed, but those can also be omitted due to being part of the Rite of Election. Okay, so you don't have to do them unless it's required by the day you're in a Sunday, or you're in a solemnity, or some day where the creed is a requirement. If you're doing this at a weekday Mass, then the creed would not be a requirement. So looking into that. And then follow, as usual, preparation of gifts, and liturgy of the Word continues. So even though it's a very short liturgy of the Word, there's a lot of elements in here to be explained. And when I say to be explained to the catechumens and their godparents, I don't mean to walk them through. Now, this is where you stand, this is where you sit, this is what bishop's going to ask you, and not that type of thing. But talking about them with the main, using the main symbols like their name, what it means to be enrolled, what it means to be chosen, and then finally, for the godparents, what does this commitment mean for you, that you're going to continue to walk this lifelong journey? So it's really for you to understand the rite, to be able to explain it to them, and so that they can be well prepared. So come back next week as we continue our study of the OCIA.